Hmm? So we're streaming live now?
Maybe out of the YouTube account.
It looks like you are.
Yeah.
La la la, look at my crazy apartment, still half a mess. Okay, so I'm going to, why don't you come on in and join me in here then?
Yeah.
I don't know how.
We'll have to stop the live stream there.
Is it, so here is the link to this. You want to come in and join me and I'll kill this?
Yeah.
All right, see you guys later. Here, I'll post that also in here. There it is. And I'll leave. Bye-bye. And then we will go here and there. And we got to be on Alex's favorite page. Where's Alex's favorite page? Let me start there. Uh-oh, doesn't like me. Didn't pay for my membership. Right. Yeah, it's weird how that RSS feed of my Twitter feed has died. I think Twitter changed some stuff. Oh, look at the little chart doesn't work here either. Boo. 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 His boo.
Just so you know, you're live.
Cool. Party. Party, party, party. Party,
Hold on,
party.
so I'm just gonna post a link in the lounge.
Sure, I guess. I mean, I'm not even quite sure what I'm looking at here. I see a big D on my screen. What the hell does that mean?
Oh, yeah? Do you like those big Ds?
Where's Alex? There's Alex. Alex, are you sharing the screen or anything?
Nope.
No, all right. So there's a bunch of people that can come in here?
Yep.
Cool. So when do we start? Is there like a start button or is it just going?
You already started it. Once you post the key for the live stream, it goes live.
Yeah, that's pretty tacky. I don't know whether we really want to use this or not.
The problem is I can post
good
a
for the
YouTube
work
video
product.
before we're actually live, right? So
Pardon?
I can't even post the YouTube video link before we are even live.
So we're blabbing away here on YouTube right now? Is that what's going on?
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, well. Fun.
I mean, we can just give it a go as it's 1 minute past the top of the hour there. So
1 minute past the top of the hour. I wonder how we and you posted this stuff in the lounge? Ooh, look at all that fun stuff. All right, and I guess Thomas, you are on the payroll here today.
I'm ready to help out, yeah.
Okay, well, go for it. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Rational Investors Daily Brief. Thomas is on the payroll today, so I'm going to put myself on mute. Go right ahead, sir. Take her away.
All right, let's start her up. Am I sharing there, Alex?
nope.
Okay.
It's just the icon.
All right, let's start this here. And oop. All right, good. So that's muted. This is here. All right, we got our market watch up, and there's a couple articles that I just want to get up on the screen before we start. We're still trying to iron out these new hangouts here, but it looks like Brian figured out how to start the live stream, so that's a good thing. And whether or not we decide to use this going forward, we shall see. But we are back in the saddle, as Brian would say, after a long meetup, and everyone's ready to see what's going on. You settled in there, Brian? You moved in, you got internet, I assume. That's why you're on, and everything seems to be going well. Did you recover from the weekend, sir? Brian's just muted.
Yeah, doing great. Continue. Go ahead, please.
All right. Brian wants me to get down to business, so we'll get that started. So yesterday, I don't think there was a brief, but we had some turmoil hit the markets. Things were really messed up. We've got Dow's down almost 350 points. You can see, we talked about earlier in the week, I think we had a hangout on Monday that things were sort of breaking down a bit. We had, from the last week, we had talk about more trade wars from Trump and all kinds of fear hitting the market with, why did the Fed talk about mid-cycle cut when it really shouldn't have been termed that way? So the market's trying to communicate that, hey, you guys need to cut a bit more. And it was interesting to listen to the talking heads today. They were basically calling for the Fed to cut more. And they were like, maybe the Fed needs to cut half a point. So 2 weeks ago, nobody was on board with the Fed cutting rates. They didn't understand why they were doing it when the stock market was at really all-time highs. The S&P was too. And now the stock market's falling, and they wish that the Fed had cut half a point. It's really entertaining to hear how these things happen. But what's happening other than last week's Fed? It looks like the other central banks around the world are also following suit along with the Fed. You've got things like the yuan coming down. I think that actually broke above $7 here. Let me see if I can get up this chart. Where are we at? So we've got the China 50, and then the yuan should be, here we go. So we're at 705. So this thing's definitely broken higher, meaning that the yuan has broken down, depending on how you want to look at this. I mean, I had these lines here. So let's switch this ABCD. I don't know if this would, maybe it would almost be considered a bot here. Let's see if that's set up properly. But yeah, so things are just going to get worse and worse out of the China trade wars. And it was interesting because this morning, Trump was caught before getting on his helicopter, and they asked him what he thought of what's going on in the market. And he said, well, basically after imposing these new tariffs, he expected the market to go down more than it already had. So I think the interpretation there is that he's prepared for more pain to hit the market and potentially more downside before he decides to act. And really, this is becoming like a battle of Trump versus the Fed. And he came out after the Fed on Wednesday and said they should have cut more. I mean, at this point, the Fed just can't win regardless. So here's the bot levels. I don't know if this thing's set up properly. We've got like 1, 2, maybe 3 lows off the 25% level and then boom higher. So really your buy signal came in about 4 days ago. But nothing in terms of like momentum that would have given you a nice signal. But, the bot affords you the ability to kind of trade a bit differently. But it looks like the target's pretty close to being hit at this point. We've got maybe just a few cents more to the upside. Other interesting things out of the world here, we've got the Central Bank of New Zealand. They also cut rates, and that was a bit of a surprise because they cut their rate by 50 points, which was double the expected reduction, right? So that would be like the Fed coming out and cutting 50 basis points as opposed to a quarter. And Thailand also came out cutting 25 basis points, and also India lowered and cut by 35 basis points. So we're seeing a lot of weakness around the world. We're seeing central banks trying to allow the lower cost of borrowing and lower interest rates to hit the marketplace in order for them to take advantage of what looks like the Fed leading the way to more liquidity being added to the system. But that still has to be announced in September. There was a funny tweet that I mentioned about, the Fed seems to say one thing and the market responds with another, which essentially happened, months ago when the Fed stopped cutting rates and said that they were on pause. And the market said, well, is it going to be a quarter point cut or a half point cut? And then this month, or last month rather, obviously the Fed cut a quarter point, and they said that this was a mid-cycle adjustment without any more mention of quantitative easing. And now the market's dumping, and the market's like, so what's it going to be next time? You're going to cut a quarter point or a half a point? And when's the easing going to hit? What kind of program are you going to launch? So we won't find out about that until September. So let's take a look under the hood here. What else is going on? VIX seems to be spiking again. 2 days ago, that was on Monday, we hit 50% at about 24. Interestingly, the stock market continues to go down today, but the VIX isn't making new highs. It seems like there's blood in the streets today. People are really getting upset. You can hear that, especially the talking heads have no idea what to make of all this, as they were saying that they didn't understand why the Fed cut. And now all of a sudden it's the Fed should have cut half a point. And for God's sake, don't listen to these people. But at this point, I think things need to settle down. Things have gone pretty crazy at this point. We can take a look at some retracement levels. On Monday, we were looking at 38.2 of the larger range. And let's extend this out. I could have sworn I fixed this, but nonetheless, let's put this here. And you can see that 38.2 on the Dow is maybe another, 200 points away. We came really close to tagging that. At present, on the 200 period moving average, we are resting just above that. So that's going to act as support, at least for the time being. You can see the gaps that were mentioned last week are still in play. Those look like they may need to be tagged. Willie still has some room to run. And, it would make sense for this thing to just pause, maybe do a little bit of a bouncy, fill in this gap here, and then ABCDs or even bots on the table for another leg lower into sort of the end of summer and really get people scrambling and having their heads chopped off running around as they get back to work in September. Same thing on the SPY. We're kind of pausing right now at Mountain Man. Interestingly, 38.2 is about 10 points away, just about at this gap level, and we're not close to hitting that just yet. But I really think these levels need to be hit to the downside, and if they're not, I think that it's kind of an inevitability at this point. But what they say about inevitabilities in the market. Nonetheless, the other thing to talk about is these cycle tops and cycle peaks. We haven't really talked about those recently. Brian, did you get a chance to talk to Adam about the cycle peak pivot that was supposed to come in at the end of September? Or are we still trying to figure out?
I never saw Adam through the whole week, which is too bad. I was kind of hoping he would come out to the meetup, but I didn't see him.
Okay, so then we'll just keep those on the chart and see what's cooking from there. I know you mentioned the Russell this morning. You were pretty impressed that the Russell looked like it was trying to pick itself up a bit. Didn't make new lows. But I mean, look, these are the lows that we were looking at on the S&P and the Dow, and we're a lot closer to those than the Dow and S&P right now. So a pause here makes more sense, and then I kind of like continuations to the downside. So that's what I'm looking at as far as the broader indices. Specifically, we got to talk about bonds. Those are making new highs. You posted some links that that's where the bull market is. The other thing that seem to be capturing the attention of traders would be this 10-year note volatility index is at highs. Did I get kicked out? Okay, I don't know what. It seems like whenever someone leaves, there's a sound that it makes. Okay, so we're at 6 on this 10-year VIX, and you can see where this would be as far as lots of wicks up here that need to be eaten. So definitely a lot of volatility hitting the bond market, and that's no surprise as you kind of look under the hood and see that these things are continuing to power higher. I'll save that talk for Brian, and I'm going to move into talking about gold and silver. Gold just continues to power higher. I mean, no evidence here that this thing's slowing down. I was looking at some monthly charts and trying to figure out levels that this thing could pause at, ABCD ideas, places that makes sense. And, we pretty much tagged them, even on the monthly. That ABCD brought us to 1490, and we've blown beyond that. 61.8 of this whole range on the monthly, the highs back in 2011 to the lows in 2016. We're looking at 61.8 at 1586. And at this point, I mean, the Mountain Man level sure looks ripe to be hit. Willie still has lots of room to run on the monthly. You can see the W's coming in on OBV. These are powerful. I mean, there's definitely a flight to safety. There's this massive trade happening in gold. And I wanted to take a look at something that many people may not be familiar with, which is the open interest on the COMEX. You can actually go back in time and take a look and see what this thing looks like. And I tried to understand, are people piling into this yet? What does the trade look like? And if you go back and compare to sort of Brexit timing, back in 2000, or you go back to 2016, even look at 2015, and correlate this to kind of like when gold was. So it looks like that peak in open interest was June 2016. And where were we in June 2016, but kind of like popping up and looking like we were about to make highs as all this turmoil was hitting the market. And that was simply a 38.2 tag, but the COMEX open interest made a pretty substantial high here. Whereas where we are right now, making newer highs from that level, the open interest hasn't really peaked beyond that level. So I'm wondering if this trade still has more room to go, that, you know, traders haven't quite been sucked into it. The other thing to look at is the COT report. It's been a long time since we've looked at COT reports for gold. That may take me a little bit to bring up because I haven't been on that in a while. COT report gold. But I'm just wondering if this thing still needs to go higher. Everyone's still expecting a pullback from who I'm talking to. You listen to the podcasts and all the other traders, they're all like, you know, I'm still waiting for gold to come back down and give me my buying opportunity. And it looks like it's gone too far too fast. And when everybody's thinking that, I mean, at this point, I just can't help but think that it's just going to continue moving at this point. And the narrative that we've painted for probably months at this point about, hey, central banks are going to continue their easy policies. They're going to be dovish. They want to support markets. I mean, that's just like the perfect storm for an asset like gold or even Bitcoin to kind of move up here. And we're seeing that, especially in gold. We're seeing that in bonds for sure. So let's take a look at this COT report. I think I've got this thing right. So green are large specs, commercials are red. They look like they're short. I don't know if I'm reading this right at this point, but small spec, large spec. So it looks like commercials are short, and then the large specs are long. So where's retail? So here we've got producers. Producers are net short. Swap dealers are net short. And it's interesting that managed money is long.
Whatever it's
am I
worth, the
reading?
trading view charts are really good at that.
Do you have that on there?
Yeah, maybe you can book a tutorial and I'll walk you through how to set it up or something.
So you don't have it on there.
Go ahead.
All right. So where do we want to go now? So we've got gold, we've got dollar. Let's take a look at the dollar and see what that looks like. DXY. DXY sitting at 97.4. And hey, look at this monthly chart. Nice double bottom coming in here. Wow, this is pretty interesting here on gold. Or sorry, this is the silver chart. So silver also powering higher. No kind of no surprise at that point. Silver's trying to play catch up. I've been particularly interested in watching this thing as it catches up to gold. But if we look at this on a daily, it's getting a little bit old here as far as the move higher. Willie getting well into overbought conditions. And let's see, what is the internals? I mean, no real reasons yet to fire off shorts. Sort of the same thinking that we've got in gold. So let's take a look at the dollar, see how that looks. I actually still have my position here on the UUP, short on that. We've got this bearish divergence, which has confirmed according to my odd MACD settings. So this is down here at this point, and we're looking for, I mean, at least I'm looking for further posts or further moves to the downside. So I'm very comfortable in this trade right now. And really, gold just continues powering higher despite the dollar breaking down more here. So any kind of further breakdown in the dollar will just sort of be more reason for gold to continue moving up. Euro looks like it's bounced. And it was really funny. On my way to the airport yesterday, I was taking an Uber on the way to LAX, and the guy's got his app loaded while he's navigating, and at the same time he's constantly switching back to what I thought was kind of like a watch list on TradingView for a bunch of currencies. And it turns out the guy was an FX trader, and he was talking about some of the trades that he had been taking, which included going long the pound from the bottom here. So he's sitting in this, waiting for this to bounce. I think he said he hit it at 121-ish. And I mean, it looks interesting, right? The pound's been oversold for a couple days now. We've got this potential div that's in the works. I mean, I'm not a Forex trader by any means. I don't like trading those markets, but I mean, you can see the potential here. It's certainly not developed in the way that, you know, Three Reasons Soda kind of talk here, no El Tangos or anything of that matter, but it could set up that way as we go forward. So I'm looking for that. And of course, you know, this has all been instigated by things like Brexit, catastrophes where no deals seem to be discussed and things of that nature. So Euro, we're at 1.12, V bottom here, bullish divergence confirmed. Let's see if I can take these fibs here, see if we can get an accurate picture of where this thing could be going. And it looks like Mountain Man's 1.126. We're about a stone's throw away from that level. Again, the problem that I have with this is this V bottom here. I really don't like that. And we all know that V bottoms will inevitably have to be retested at some point. Where to now? Let's see. I've got some trades working on, you know, a few. I mean, at this point, any kind of puts that I bought before the Fed seem to be doing really, really well. This Pepsi trade that I still have on 125 puts, this thing tagged it, seems to be bouncing. 38.2 was just a bit lower. I'm hanging in this trade probably a bit longer just before we kind of bounce here. You can see that this trade's getting a bit long in the tooth, meaning that we've got this potential bullish divergence developing. Willie is now well into oversold conditions, so I need to start adjusting things like locking in profits as we go forward. What else can we talk about? I don't know, Brian, you've been awfully silent there. You got anything to contribute here, or are you just going to be a spectator for the show?
No, spectate. Continue on. Thank you.
All right, then Brian will be a spectator. So let's see what else we can look for. So I was actually really interested in things like semiconductors. Those seem pretty strong today. Let's take a look at the SOX and see how that's doing, which is interesting because things like you know, trade war should really affect this thing pretty negatively. You know, not doing the greatest, but nonetheless seem to be trying to bounce. So let's take a look at AMD or NVIDIA. AMD, I mean, I don't really see a trade here at all. In fact, this looks kind of wonky also. Things like semiconductors should not be doing well. So let's see what NVIDIA is doing. NVIDIA at 151, same thing. I mean, really no trades there. Hit 61.8, no real divs, no real setups, so we'll just move away from that. I know a lot of people were interested in Tesla. Tesla seems to be coming off a bit. You know, there was that bearish divergence off of a kind of like an FU move higher beyond 38.2 and just kind of came off, continued, you know, bear div. Hey, I mean, at this point, can you fire off a trade? Where would I be interested in this thing? I'd have to wait for that W to confirm, right? We're kind of trying to bottom off of 38.2, and I know that a lot of traders are like continuously bearish on this stock. Just the fact that, you know, Elon Musk is pumping out as many cars as he possibly can to save his ass from bankruptcy. And this is like the darling short that everyone wants to be piling in. But I think too many people are short this thing, but I'm certainly not going to be interested in playing it. I've seen some people in the lounge taking positions, but they are much better suited for things like that than I am. Next thing that was interesting was, Alcoa, that's that. Galaxy, no. What was it? Oh, so utilities. Utilities was something that continued to suffer through this market, and really just nothing great coming through here. No real continuations, and it's, you know, it's interesting when you listen to the talking heads and they say things like, "Oh, utilities and semiconductors look like they're, you know, semiconductors are doing well and utilities are getting crushed," and you bring up a chart, it's really not the discussion that you're looking for. In fact, the other thing that they were discussing were these financials. things like financials should not be doing well through things like Fed cuts. And sure enough, boom, this thing's getting crushed right now. I've really been interested in this for the better part of the year, trying to take a position, but I never got in on this. It's interesting that most of these trades actually developed sort of through the meetup, and it was really tough to kind of get the pulse of the market while at the same time hanging out with everybody. So I don't regret it. We all had a wonderful time. But here's 61.8 on the financials, 200 period moving average, sitting right there with current price action. So is this the time to be looking contrarian? I don't think so. Financials could certainly continue to suffer as things like, continued Fed easing and interest rate cuts could hurt things like the bank. It's interesting that gap right there looks like it's currently being filled in. There's gaps down below here at 25.6. We can look at stocks like JP Morgan and a few others and see what those look like. But JP Morgan's kind of looking a little weak too. I mean, no surprise, these are all part of the financials. And it was actually, I should have this article up here. Where is this at? There was an article that was put out by Goldman Sachs, and not to backtrack a bit, but this is an article about Goldman seeing that they could see gold rising to 1,600 or even higher on escalating trade war. And when I see things like that out of Goldman Sachs, I get really, really worried that maybe it's not the best time to be looking for this thing to move higher. But nonetheless, we do have levels to work with. And the fact that Goldman's coming out here, especially after they shut down their trade desk, which happened like 6 to 8 months ago, that was their commodities trading desk where they were trading, things like gold and silver. And I think they were even trading platinum. That thing just got shut down. And it's kind of hilarious that right after they shut that thing down, these commodities turned the corner. And it's not only Goldman that's coming out and saying things like that. It was also Societe Generale, which is the French bank. They came out and said that everyone should be buying gold. So as this starts to hit and more people get interested, I mean, people are going to end up buying the top here. It's probably early, but nonetheless, these things continue to be coming out. So that's broader market roundup. I've been trying to find new positions. This is really the first day in the office that I've had to try to run through things that are going on, but that's kind of your roundup. Is there anything you want to pitch in broader market before we move on to crypto, Brian?
No, looks like you're doing a great job. Continue on, please.
All right, then let's move on to crypto and see what's going on in that market. It's certainly been an interesting weekend and an interesting week for it. Things like crazy moves have been hitting the market. Let me just get a couple of these articles up on the screen before moving on into that. We've got things like Chinese hackers coming in and they're actually state-sponsored hackers looking to sabotage things here in the US. And then we've got an article here by Coinbase about Coinbase. And if anybody remembers when Bitcoin Cash was first launched, well, there was some not first launched, but first listed on Coinbase. There was some discussion that maybe there was some insider trading going on, and everybody was furious with Coinbase because that thing continued to pump like days before it was listed and then kind of dumped after the listing. And people were accusing Coinbase that they were potentially behind an insider trading issue. So there was a lawsuit filed, and this was filed in the Northern District of California with this judge. And essentially, long story short on this article is the judge didn't find any wrongdoing. He came out and said, assuming Bitcoin Cash is a commodity, so at the very first place, is this thing even subject to regulation, the judge states. The complaint does not sufficiently explain how the launch manipulated the market for Bitcoin Cash or for Bitcoin, nor does it plausibly or coherently describe Coinbase and Armstrong's motive to manipulate the prices. So the judge didn't find Coinbase guilty for any kind of manipulation. But what I did find interesting that there was not an external audit of or any interviews conducted about potential insider trading. This kind of paragraph addresses that and said that some claim insider trading took place ahead of the listing, as insiders were accused of buying Bitcoin Cash before the listing was public. And this says that the investigation was conducted by Coinbase itself, which found no insider trading. That to me is a little odd. Maybe this article's not covering that there was some research done into that, but that's basically been thrown out, with the exception that the plaintiffs in this case can move forward with a negligence lawsuit, that Coinbase may have handled things in an incompetent way, and that they had a duty to maintain a functional market, and that they rushed sort of the Bitcoin Cash contract to market before the CME started trading Bitcoin futures, and that maybe that was the negligence, that they didn't launch this thing with enough sort of liquidity in place to prevent the price from rising uncontrollably. I don't know how you prove that in a court of law, but they're going to have one hell of a meeting there with that court. So that's that. The other thing is this topic about Chinese government hackers targeting crypto companies. And they're implanting things like Monero mining tools and malware that pretty much takes advantage of things like US-based game studios and things like supply chains. And this is just typical kind of like Chinese hacker stuff, where they're forcing people's machines to mine Monero. It's kind of the same talk about security. Make sure you're not opening emails that have attachments that you don't know about. And I mean, it's just kind of same story. There's always going to be this stuff hitting the market and hitting different companies. So that was an interesting report about more Monero malware. And then this I found really fascinating was that Bitcoin is to get smart contracts. We all know that kind of Ethereum is designed to be that smart contract protocol, and everyone was looking at it as that. And it really took hold quite well in 2017, to the point where at one point it was getting really close to the market cap of Bitcoin. But as some things kind of were exposed, that Ethereum was just as incompetent, if you will, as Bitcoin was at maintaining the network, that things like large transactions and too many people using the network caused issues with lag, with increased transaction costs, that Ethereum kind of lost its luster, so to speak. And then, of course, we had things like, coins and ICOs being listed that were shalt coins, and kind of exposed the Ethereum network to not quite be the diamond that everyone expected it to be. So now you've got Bitcoin coming out, and a couple of developers, actually a group of developers, who come out and said that they want to program some form of smart contract onto the Bitcoin chain. Now, how they're going to do this is a bit of a complexity, because you've got several different sort of networks or chains that can run. There's, of course, Liquid, and then there's something called, where did it go? I think it's like Solidity, or no, not Simplicity. But basically, you get these two different chains here, and they're basically supposed to run these things like, these smart contracts and new chains. And there's issues with how these things are going to run in a trustless form. And I mean, it's all interesting. And what you can basically take away from this is that Ethereum is kind of in a developer phase as well. And it's kind of like a race. So this article talks about how Bitcoin essentially has 2 years before Ethereum gets its act together, and Bitcoin can kind of launch this sort of its own smart contracts on its own network. And now the Ethereum guys have to worry about how do they stay relevant if Bitcoin's going to try and do the same thing. Now, obviously, the Bitcoin chain isn't programmed specifically for this. It's just if then and other expressions like that, and nothing complex that this article talks about passing the Turing test, which they claim Ethereum could eventually do if programmed with the right whatever's put on it. But I mean, this is going to be fascinating to watch, right? Everyone seems to be using Bitcoin as far as institutions and piling money into the space. That seems to be where it's flowing right now. But I mean, this is still a Bitcoin only story at this point. I mean, none of the other coins are kind of getting the same attention that Bitcoin is. So we're going to definitely see that developer cycle take hold and see what has everyone been up to over the last, call it 2 years at this point, while things have calmed down. Really, it's like a year and 8 months. But and again, remember, it's funny, we were talking about how long these bear markets can last, and almost right on that 16 18 month ish area, right? So we're kind of powering higher. So let's take a look at some technicals and see what is going on here. So I've got Ethereum up. Let's take a look at Bitcoin first. It was interesting, right? We were talking last week. I think, Brian, you were talking about things like bearish bots potentially setting up, and things like potential weakness.
Bearish? No.
In.
We just had
Yeah, I mean,
bullish objective hit.
Yeah. No, on Friday, I think there was a potential Ethereum bearish bot, but I don't know if we were looking at Bitcoin. But yeah, we definitely had some objectives hit. You had what, an ABCD, or was that a bot?
You know what the weird thing about Ethereum is it just has not participated in this market. So I don't think I have bearish setups here. I think just in simplest terms, we had, whoops, are we still connected? No idea if I'm sharing screen or not.
Yeah, but you're not screen sharing, so I guess you have to click your icon as well.
All right. I think I'm clicking on my icon here. Can you guys see that?
Nope, we're still with Thomas.
I wonder how I do that.
So who started that
share?
Brian did.
What's up?
So you.
I can come off screen share. Maybe that'll work.
Your icon, Brian, because it's still Thomas's that is encircled in blue.
Okay, well, no big deal. We'll just stay on Thomas. But no, I don't have any bearish bots on Ethereum right now. But looks like we got just a nice simple failure on Bitcoin right up at a classic technical target. Yeah, maybe I'll put. Yeah, I don't see anything building for me on Ethereum just at the moment. But if I can't screen share, there's no point in me talking. So I'll just go back on mute. Continue on, please.
So I think the way that you screen share is you have to bring up your Hangout and you click on your own name, and then it shows your screen, and then you have to be able to click back on mine.
Yeah.
So those little heads on the right.
Yeah, I have a screen sharing, and I clicked on my little box up top, and now the blue square is around it. But
yeah, but it's not around it on YouTube. So maybe Thomas, can you click on Brian's icon as well there on his screen?
Yeah. Did that change?
Where is the YouTube page? Do we have is there actually a link to a YouTube page?
Yeah, it's in the chat. It's in the Chipsy chat as well.
In the lounge?
Oh wow! So you can see the people on the right side. I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, you click them. So if I click them away, it's not changing anything, right? Maybe Brian, you'd have to do that as well.
Let's see. Maybe like on the right-hand side of the screen, it's got a whole bunch of people that are in the call here. And I've clicked on the top button. Maybe do I right-click? What happens if I click this? What happens if I click that?
See?
Can you see my screen now?
Nope.
No.
Oh, okay. And anyway, guys, everybody's watching this. Keep in mind, we're just working out the kinks here. If anything, it's probably best this happens in the middle of the summer. As soon as Labor Day comes back, that's when things should really get going. So
Yeah,
I'm not
I
quite sure how to fix this though.
all right, so it's back to you, Thomas, I guess.
All right. Yeah, I guess on YouTube I still see that my box is highlighted in blue.
Yeah, so that doesn't change even if Brian or me or you click on Brian's screen, right? So we might have to change the platform, I guess.
No big deal. You
Yeah.
guys are doing great. You are all awesome. Okay, somebody says,
Yeah.
here, don't you have to click on bottom left hand on share screen? Okay.
Yeah, that's just so you share your screen in general, right? But you actually
wonderful mug. Woo! Hey, look at the shirt I'm wearing. I'm gonna be wearing Coinigy and TRI garb now for the next 6 months straight. All right, so I did that. I'm not quite sure why I'm not screen sharing. That seems a bit odd. Maybe I have to.
There it goes. You got it.
I could kick Thomas out. That'd be one way.
You're sharing your screen now.
You're sharing right now.
Hey, I'm sharing my screen now. Woohoo, buddy! So whoever mentioned that in the little text box here on the call, thank you very much. That was totally awesome of you. Who was that? Was that Daniel? Daniel's such a fucking beast of a trader. Actually, it was really cool. Might as well throw in my 2 cents here. This morning, I saw, where the hell was it? Man, and I have to sort of get you back into the loop, so it's going to take me a while to sort of get my head on straight. I guess it was up in here. I mean, just the most beautiful short trade location. Just absolutely textbook. And in fact, actually, you know what? I even put a cool tweet out. Let's see if I can find that tweet. That was so much fun. I don't know, Colleen, are you on the call here? I even made direct reference to Colleen last night. It's so funny. Let's see what we got here. How do I see? I can't even remember how the hell I do that. Library, I think it is. And then we'll go social, and we'll go TRI, Twitter. I thought this was so cool. Are we showing my screen here? Sure.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Let's see, where are we here? Thought I tweeted out. Yeah, here. So I wrote up, I don't know whether you can see this. I mean, this is just so textbook range markets. Mountain Man, trend line resistance failure, and top of value. What a great analogy. Market tried to pop up above value, just didn't find any buyers, just got whacked right back down. I mean, just beautiful. Railroad tracks, nice, basically 2-bar violent reversal here. This is a 4-hour chart too. And then this morning, and really, I mean, if you guys want to be day traders, all that kind of stuff, this is what you have to hunt for this, and you have to force yourself to take these trades. Now, you can maybe just paper trade for now. You don't need to bet the farm right away. But I loaded up the chart this morning. This happens to be on these crazy OKCoin Nutso markets. But notice this trend line. If we draw just a simple trend line, notice how the market was using that as a reference point. I don't know whether you guys can see that or not. But a really good example where a trend line that is often lost actually becomes resistance. So it was trying to be higher, then trying to recapture, trying to recapture, trying to recapture, trying to recapture, and it just couldn't get back above that line. But what I noticed is, and then, you know, that tweet that I put out, beautiful divergence, Willie stupid. Sounds to me like we got El Tangonators in the house. I hope you guys are having fun. I'm having fun being back on this site. Took me a while to get my computer back up and running. It was a pain in the butt. But check this out. Remember, I don't know. Can you guys see my screen? Alex, can you see my screen? Am I
Yes.
just talking to myself? Am I just blabbing out? Hey, there's Colleen. Hey, Colleen. Nice to see you. So you saw Colleen's value high, Mountain Man, trendline resistance. There is that trendline resistance again. I don't know if you can see that or not. Right there. Boom. Right. And look at this freaking setup. Oh my goodness. Reload zones within reload zones. And Daniel even posted that he was watching this and he just couldn't get in on this short. So just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful stuff. So I think that was the trade this morning. With regard to Bitcoin, it was just really cool to see how it all played out there, especially in regard to sort of this. And this is the last thing. I'll stay here, and then I'll turn it back over to the bear. But we had this beautiful algo signal come in here right through the TRI meetup. I mean, just absolutely textbook. And it was so cool at the meetup. I was sitting there as this was coming in. And everybody's like, hey, check out my setup. Hey, look at this long setup. Hey, look at this setup. It was so cool because it just is a validation that, and you know, like everybody comes to the TRI meetups, they're pretty much OGers. We don't really have too many new people come to those big meetups. And it was just fantastic to see all the OGers were on top of the trade. Sin, hats off to you, Sin. If you are watching, great to hear that you Aussies made it back to Australia. Man, these guys came a long way for this meetup. So proud of you guys. But Sin totally nailed this. And he even had this Mountain Man level as his price objective. And he was super stoked when that Mountain Man level was hit. You know, Brian, I'm a little more conservative. I'm going to be shooting for 50% rolls. But hats off to you, Sin. Beautiful, beautiful work. So, you know, just wanted to point out, Algos fired, had a bunch of setups that were all rocking and rolling on the long side. And this is what the reference that I made earlier. I think this is the end of the move here, not the beginning. If we drill down to those lower time frames, trend line resistance, Mountain Man, top of value, stop this thing like just an absolute break. I don't think I really have anything new. If this is a bot continuation pattern, then of course I want to see 3 higher lows. But my hunch is, you can see how value's playing here. My hunch is we're probably going to play around here a little bit. But, you know, I have to say before I turn it back over to the bear, here's a great example of strong opinions loosely held. You know, I was convinced that this was a rising wedge and it was going to fail. And clearly it did not. So I'm not quite sure what the hell to make out of this gold market right now, but great example of doesn't matter what your opinion is, a lot of the time your opinion is going to be completely worthless. So just trade those damn setups. All right, I'll go back on mute. Hopefully you guys got an impression of what I'm seeing out of the Bitcoin price right now. Thank you. Toodaloo.
All right, thanks for that. It's funny, you know, I was listening this morning to Brent Johnson, is the guy that's got the dollar milkshake theory idea. And when I was in Vancouver,
I have a screen sharing problem again, so we're stuck with Brian now.
All right, so Brian's got to tag my screen, I think.
Okay, so I'm not screen sharing. You can see there I am. Wonderful.
Hi, nice new apartment.
I'm clicking on Thomas's box.
Okay, we are on Thomas's screen, yeah.
All right, yay. All right, go.
All right. So I was listening to Brent Johnson this morning talking about his dollar milkshake theory that we talked about, that I was listening to in January. And he basically thought the Fed was going to raise interest rates and the dollar was going to continue moving higher. And well, long story short, basically, he had to admit that he was wrong on air. And he's like, listen, if you're in this business and you are a trader, being wrong is just part of the game. Like if you're new to trading and you're here listening to us because you think we get it right all the time, you're here for the wrong reasons. You know, everybody here who's a trader inevitably will get a call wrong. What separates you from basically a good trader from a bad trader is your risk management abilities. If you can't limit your downside and you don't know how to use stops and eject yourself out of positions or lock in profits, you're going to get, your ass handed to you. And like Brian just said, strong opinions loosely held. And that's just the story of how this game works. So it's funny because even this morning I was looking at Ethereum, and Ethereum had this crazy looking double bottom come in. In fact, the perfect setup that I like to use all the time, which is we've got this bearish divergence that came in. We got our market structure bottom. I waited for the confirmation here of this candle, which confirmed above the neckline, and I went long. And I felt pretty good for about an hour, 2 hours. And then all of a sudden, this came in and I got stopped out. And I didn't even know until I fired up my computer and I was like, what the hell happened here? I mean, this is just like textbook. If you don't have stops set, you lose. End of story. Like, I would have blown up part of that position. I would have been down 40% if I was still holding this thing. So it's just a part of the way this whole thing works. So what can we be looking at from now? I mean, this looked like it's set up quite nicely, but it looks like Ethereum's taking its cues from Bitcoin. And, Bitcoin kind of, I don't know, did it have the same bull div? Didn't really have it. And I wonder if this is a product of my MACD settings. No. So if I had this on either setting, this still was not a bullish divergence, did not come into the market there. So this thing rose and then right into New York kill zone, got smashed back down a couple hours ago, and now we're trying to figure out where to go. So Brian has his kind of idea that Bitcoin looks like it's hit a level, and there's no doubt about it that now we've got two pieces of evidence that there are sellers up here, the 12,300 on OKX and the 12,500 looks like levels that are being hit to the short side. So I just want to take a look at the higher time frames to see why that is. And you can see if you draw your fibs right into Mountain Man, that 12,374, that pop higher, boom, there's your the first place where they're hitting it short. And then again, we tried to pop up this morning and we're getting rejected a second time. The 4 hour does not look from a price perspective very healthy. I mean, I don't see the internals leading to this thing, no bearish divergences except maybe this little cluster here, but that looks like it's trying to play itself out. So maybe this was the trade into the week that people are hitting it short. You can see where we could potentially go back down. And yeah, I mean, it was just, I actually loved hanging out with all the different traders. We're all bouncing ideas off of each other. We're hanging out at the bar, or at Decontrol, drinking beers, and people are coming over like, hey, did you see this? Take a look at this double bottom working, and I went long from here, and everyone's just kind of talking about their trades and their levels. And I mean, really, we were talking at the meetup that we should do this more often, because I feel like when we're all one collective group, all bouncing ideas off of each other, we kind of get to a place that is really unique. And it was totally different feeling than anything I've ever seen. Like everybody kind of, like Brian said, all OGers in one place. It certainly was. Everyone knew what they were doing. We've all kind of been veterans to the market, and everyone kind of understood how to play their setups, where to set their stops, where the targets were. And pretty much anyone who saw a setup had a similar one painting the same objectives. And that was off that double bottom, as Brian just talked about. So now, where could we potentially be looking to the downside? Obviously 38.2s. This is kind of where we broke out into the weekend. And now I can expect this thing to go back down here. Once this market structure top comes in, I think that 38.2 test is certainly in the cards. I'm actually waiting for these moving averages to roll over too. I think once that happens, then we'll get the go ahead. Again, sometimes I like to see things like MACD line up with all of these things for a real serious push down, but sometimes you don't get that. And other times you don't get the push down, or you do get a serious push down absent the MACD bearish divergences or bullish divergences. But nonetheless, the other thing is that my indicator seems like it's not looking too happy. So I think kind of going forward, we have to temper our enthusiasm to the upside. And I'm probably just restating what Brian said. But let's take a look at Ethereum, see what I was looking at. Obviously, that failed. So now where can we be looking? I mean, 200 period moving average sitting right there. This bull div is now failing. and we're just kind of trying to explore lower, seeing where that could potentially go to. So the hourly bull setup failed. So I kind of have to be on the sidelines at this point until this thing figures out what it wants to do. So therefore, I'm going to start with a daily and go from there on down and take a look. Because, you know, what I was looking at, and, you know, a couple of traders were talking about, was this Ethereum daily chart looks interesting. And I mean, you can see that this market structure bottom kind of came in here, and we're just now retesting that neckline. But I think what needs to happen here is you sort of get a 61.8 level that gets tested to the downside, kind of wait for these 13 and 30 moving averages to cross. I really like seeing those things cross bullishly before we can continue moving up. I mean, no doubt about it, from a daily perspective, this does not look healthy, kind of like fractally at this point. I think this is certainly on the table. 38.2 sitting at 221. I think that that might develop. Is this going to turn into a market structure top? That's a little early to say, but if we do get that, then you have to think about levels down below. The other thing is 78.6 sitting down here. No real gaps, but the other thing that you have to remember is that this tail here certainly needs some attention. So maybe that'll set up going into tomorrow or even next week. But 4 hour, let's see how that's setting up. 4 hour looks, you know, you can see the fake out that happened on the previous 4 hour candle. These moving averages are dangerously close to crossing again. If we switch this to a line chart, you can see really easily where that M came in originally, where we're failing from again. And in fact, is this a bear div here on the 4 hour? It looks like it is. This is confirmed and currently playing around. Let's make sure, and eventually I'll back test this MACD situation so I won't have to keep switching back and forth, but this is nice and clear without that simple moving average of the signal line being checked. So there's your bear div working. So 38.2 for a stop, I can certainly see that. And then depending on how that resolves, obviously your Ray barbecue level will dictate, is this going to bounce or are we going to continue moving lower? I kind of like tags below value here on the volume profile. That's your $200 area. I really think things need to just kind of cool off a bit. Things got a little heated this weekend and at the end of the week last week, mainly because of the Trump trade war, sort of the Fed rhetoric and all that other stuff. And again, it's just got to cool off a bit, in my opinion. And I'm going to be hunting these bearish setups on the 4 hour because I think the hourly's just kind of been screwed up here. So where could I be looking to go long? To go short. I mean, here's your kind of double neckline area. That's the first one that we saw on the line chart that broke down. That would be like the 233. We already got that test this morning. That move higher was kind of the fake out that I got all excited about, but it was like we weren't out in New York kill zone, so I guess I jumped the gun a bit. But I guess I'd probably be looking for 229, 228 area, and even for these moving averages to come back down. I don't think I'm going to fire this off right away, or at least put orders in. I'm probably going to wait for the next couple 4 hour candles, and I may even get left behind, but I want to see these kind of cross and then retest. But this could be like a day or two here, right? You've got 4, 8, maybe 12, so 3 candles before these moving averages cross, if this thing doesn't just dump like the Dickens here. And it certainly looks like it could, given that this candle tail down below has kind of broken down. We tagged 224 here while I've been chatting, and things just don't look too strong. So again, I think it's kind of wise for all of us to temper our bullish enthusiasm just temporarily, and really be looking for things like bearish setups that fit plans on sort of higher time frames, right? The 4 hours across these two Bitcoin and Ethereum markets look a little unhealthy at the moment. What's Litecoin doing? That tagged $100. I mean, boy, talk about a blow off here on the 4 hour. This happened on Monday. We went up to almost 109, and right, that was your halvening event. You know, this was your buy the rumor, sell the news. So halvening happened, and boom, everyone's like, okay, well, that's the end of that party. And sort of same setups here. You've got that bearish divergence. Is this confirmed? It is indeed confirmed. You got the tag of the neckline on Litecoin, and we're breaking down. You can see M's across OBV. You can see it across the accumulation distribution. But Willie's got a little bit more to go, but it doesn't look, at this point, right? This thing, let's draw our fibs before I open my big fat mouth here. So 78.6 is sitting at 81 bucks. We're tagging Mountain Man right now on Litecoin. So I'll be interested to see, is Litecoin sort of still leading these markets? You can see it's a bit further ahead than, say, Ethereum or Bitcoin in terms of retesting this original breakout that happened earlier last week. Right now, we're in those levels, but not at those levels on Ethereum or Bitcoin. If Ethereum if Litecoin turns the corner here at 61.8, I'd be looking to see how the other two markets are still using Litecoin as sort of their leading indicator or their leading market. To me, it's absolutely baffling that these markets still follow Litecoin, and I really would love to understand why Litecoin seems to be a step ahead of everything. But maybe that had something to do with the halvening event, and people were placing liquidity there. That could be one explanation. If anyone has any other ideas, I'm happy to listen to them. But you can see the levels on Litecoin. Like if I were to short this thing, I'm looking for retest back at like 92 bucks for an $87 tag, or even kind of like sell halves on doubles if you're using leverage, and looking for continuation moves sub 87 for like a 78.6 tag. You can see that nice tail here might need some attention. And we highlighted that on Bitcoin, the tail down here at like 9,200. And then on Ethereum is probably down around, this $200 level. But it is fascinating to see how much further ahead Litecoin is over those other markets. So I think we've got some things to watch. We've got bearish setups that are coming in. So I think we've got some good setups going forward for the rest of the week. Trying to think, is there anything else newsworthy that we should discuss? I mean, is there...
It's the top of the hour, so we should probably wind this up now.
Okay.
I think it's not a bad first stab getting back in the saddle, and I think you did a few of these while I was face down in a ditch over the past week, eh? So,
yeah, happy to pick up the slack.
What day is it today? Today's Wednesday, Thursday? Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday. So I'm going to try at 11 o'clock, everybody. Of course, these everything's changed with Hangouts gone and new video feeds and all that kind of fun stuff. So, but I'll try and do the Wednesday session for, what is it? I guess it's a level 3ers. We do the group tutorial session today. So if you are in level 3 and you'd like to participate in the group chat, probably just to get sort of back into the stream of things, and maybe review a whole bunch of the option stuff that you guys should be working away on, look out for that. I don't know, Alex, should we try and do one of these review videos? Do you think we're ready to do that yet?
Yeah, I think we should give it a try. I think probably the reason why I couldn't stream these things is because I get kicked out of the YouTube account all the time. So maybe we'll...
Okay, well, we'll just try our best. We'll figure out if it works, great. If it doesn't, please don't be upset at us. We're slowly working our way through trying to figure all this out. So, what do you think, Mr. Mayor? Do you think we gave these people a little bit of value today?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Bear. Appreciate the input, earning your keep, so that's good. I like to see that. So, why don't we leave it at that? I don't think I'm screen sharing, am I? But food for thought. Here's kind of a fun, and I don't know. I'm just going to click on my screen. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but anyway. Look how close we're getting to yield curve inversion. Dun, dun, dun. So, when we see the yield curve ultimately invert, then we know we've got probably about 6 months until the shit really hits the fan. So, getting closer. All right. Have yourselves a great day, everybody. All the best, and bye for now.
You're